Welcome to Into the Woods. I'm your host Dermot, and we are only moments away from chatting to our special guest. If you want to join in the conversation, be sure to follow our socials. You can find us on X at Into the Woods Pod and on Instagram at Into the Woods Pod 10. As always, I'm joined by my co-host Michael. How are you, Mick?
Good, thank you. Bit excited. First interview today. See how we
Yes,
go. I'm
yes.
predicting we're not going to be very good at it. But anyway, let's see.
All right, so today's special guest played 225 games and kicked 270 goals for the Pies. He's a two-time All-Australian as both a forward and a defender. He won the 2008 Goal of the Year and is regarded as one of the most mercurial players to have ever played the game. Welcome to the Into the Woods podcast, Leon Davis.
No worries, boys. Thanks for having me. I'm
Uh,
excited to be on here and let's get into it. Let's have a chat.
We will. Now we thought we'll be original and go chronological. We'll start at the beginning. Nobody else ever does that, Leon. So you were drafted at the end of 99. Now
Yep.
I understand you were a little bit reluctant to come over to the Pies. Long way to come for a 17-year-old. Did you tell us a bit about that? And also, did you have some family support when you actually came over?
Yeah, look, I think it was a struggle for me to go to the draft camp, actually. So that was a bit of a story in itself. Got the push along and the nudge from my mum. I sort of, yeah, kicked up a little bit and was very reluctant to want to go. And, there was something else on with, my two brothers and my cousins and that back home on that same weekend, on the same dates that the
Oh,
draft camp was on. So I wasn't too keen on going. But yeah, ended up going and I'm glad I did. So I think, just for myself, it was, a big family and, a lot of connection to my country and which is Whadjuk country, Balladong country back home in Western Australia. So connections throughout a few more. But yeah, look, it was always a want of mine to want to stay home. So when Collingwood called my name, straight away it was trying to figure out, and Mum knew exactly what I was doing. I was trying to figure out where the Collingwood Football Club was in WA, so I wanted to stay home that bad. But yeah, look, in hindsight, to get drafted to Collingwood was probably a blessing in disguise, and it's led me to now to the work I do now, and the change in the football club that I'd like to think that I played a huge part in in a cultural sense and education and all that stuff on our cultural ways and our First Nations people in our community. So, yeah, look, at the start, I wasn't very keen on it. The cold weather got me straight away.
yeah.
I hated being over in Victoria and my brothers and family back
Well,
home
we'll
were,
try Tasmania, Leon. Don't
yeah, I
talk.
know, yeah,
Don't talk
exactly.
to us
Yeah, it
about
does get
cold
worse.
weather. Don't talk to us about
But
cold
for me,
weather.
yeah, it's the weather got to me straight away. But yeah, look, when my brothers and my family back home were doing stuff on country and going hunting
Yeah,
and doing all the fun things I did growing up, and I couldn't be there because I was chasing my dream and playing AFL football. It was hard to get that balance right.
yeah.
But my two brothers, one older, one younger. Trevor was my older brother. Robert was my younger brother, and the advice I got from them from day one when I got drafted and throughout my life and my journey has always stayed the same. And worked very hard to get drafted, and it was a dream of mine. So they pretty much forced me to stay and live out my dream, which I had plenty of support from them and that as well. The support I got when I first came over, I did live with a host family, Alan Thorpe, that played for Bulldogs, Carlton, Fitzroy. He was my host family. Still
Right.
very close with them today. So very, very fortunate that I was put you know, into their home and they took me on. So that was very fortunate and no doubt one of the main reasons why I stayed at Collingwood and stayed in Victoria for as long as I did.
Right. Yeah. So you weren't tempted in the early days to get back to WA with a WA club. You weren't really tempted at that stage.
No, yeah, look, my plan was to come over and play the mandatory 2 years
Right.
on
Yeah.
your contract you get when you get drafted. And, from, I suppose, the day that, it was on the draft and the draft was on TV, old Ansett, I think, was the sponsor. And
Mm.
I'm going back that far. So, but, that day there, it was straight away in the living room when I got the call from Mark Lyman, which was the team manager at the time. And, welcomed me to the club. It was straight away that I knew it would be a 2 year thing that I'd go to Melbourne and Victoria and play for Collingwood for 2 years and hopefully get drafted or traded back to a WA team. But the funny story around that, I met at a function when I first got to Collingwood, early days. I met Nicky Winmar for the first time, and he was the same. He's Pindley and a place that that I'm very familiar with, where he's grown up and he lived as a young kid and that. So he sort of said in a joking way at the time, you don't be surprised if you stay here your whole career, which in hindsight, looking back now, to have play for 11 seasons and not go back home is something I look back on now. And some wise words from someone so great and someone that I admire. But his support, Michael Long's support, and everyone throughout the journey, all the other, Indigenous players that played, it was great to have that brotherhood and that support from them as well to help me through.
Yeah, 'cause I remember when Winmar retired, he actually went and played a water ball for a few years. So even he didn't go straight back after his AFL career ended. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you find that, when it's more than just football. You get, you become, you get tied in with community and a lot of people, and it's no doubt of mine, and it's very familiar to me that, I went back home for a bit, but then I found myself back over here in Victoria, and I've lived here probably more of my lifetime than I have back home. So home's always there, and I know I'm very strong with my connections to my culture and my family and my community back home. But to be able to live here in Victoria on Whadjuk country and where my wife's from, it's a blessing as well. I'll get a good balance of both.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah, nice. So take us into your first day at the club. So you walk into the doors of Victoria Park, and you see the likes of Buckley and Mick Moldhouse and all these other great players and coaches. That must have been such a surreal feeling for a young man that's never really experienced anything quite like that.
Look, very nervous. It was, I was confident in my football ability. And the training part of it was the fun part. I think I struggled a lot with when training wasn't on, days off, before and after training, going home and stuff like that. It was lock myself away in the room and didn't really come out too much. But really excited about the football side of it and going to training and being there. But yeah, I knew Nathan Buckley. Didn't know too many other players there, but pretty early it was, to meet Bucks and know him and watch him play and found myself on a Saturday, back home in WA growing up, always in front of the TV and watching some footy, watching AFL. And, I knew all the good players. So to go to Collingwood and actually be able to meet him, meet Mick Moldhouse, and those kind of things were very, very surreal. And it was, like I said before, you work all work all my childhood and I had a dream. That was to play AFL football. For that to happen and get drafted, a few, experiences early that really turned that around with some sorry business back home with some family members passing away and that, and found it really difficult to balance being away from home when that stuff happens. Yeah. Look, the excitement of it and meeting these kind of guys and being in an AFL environment was probably the excitement part. Everything else that comes with it, I suppose, was the stuff that I had to balance and found hard at times.
Who were your early mentors, say, like in your first year at the club? I think I read somewhere that you were close with Anthony Rocker, is that right? Did he drive you to and from training as a young man before you got your license?
Yeah, look, I think he tells a very good story about that. He was my alarm clock, so I wouldn't wake up until he was tooting the horn at the front. He lived up the road from where I was staying at the time in Preston, and he'd pick me up on the way through and that, and he was great, for myself and really getting into the routine of being on the clock and having a routine of being at training at this time and being, having the professionalism of that kind of stuff. But for that, very, very thankful to him to look after me that way, and it definitely made me feel more comfortable to get to know someone like that, a senior player and someone with his personality and his, where he stood at the club. Ben Johnson, Reece Shaw, those two guys were great for for me staying. They made me feel welcome, obviously my same draft year. Them understanding that how difficult it was for me to fit in and try and, coming from WA, and I played state 18s against them. So for those two guys to look after me, and I'm still really close with them. I texted Reece the other day when he got the coaching job and, hit me back straight away. So it's always good to keep that relationship there and stay as close as we have. We'll catch up with Jono all the time. So, that advice I get from them and the support has never wavered. So those two guys are a huge reason to why, I stayed at Collingwood and I stayed there for so long. And not just those guys, it's their families as well. So yeah, really, really fortunate that I was able to get along with those guys. But I think it's just a football club thing where, everyone tries to make everyone fit in. And I was very fortunate to have, and have those guys make me feel welcome and look after me.
Yeah, nice. Can you tell us a little bit about Benny Johnson? Like, I love Ben Johnson. He's one of my all-time favorites, but you don't really hear a lot about him anymore. I feel like he was a very underrated player, backman, wingman. But like, can you give us an insight to what he was like, maybe off-field, that made him so good? Because, we hear about the stories of him being a part of the Rat Pack, Swanee and Dids and all that. But yeah, I'm just fascinated to know a little bit more about him.
I think he's just someone that you want in your corner. I think he's a straight shooter. He's very honest. He would tell you how it was, whether you liked it or not. He'd be the first one to back you when you fell down or you made a mistake. He'd be there to help you up. He'd have a crack at you first, but he'd also encourage you and support you to come back the other way. I think he's just someone that Jono's just someone that you find every day, and you're very thankful and you're very lucky if you have a mate like him in your corner. So he's just one of those genuine blokes that, like I said, straight down the line, honest, and he'll have your back no matter what. Part of the Rat Pack. Obviously, one of the guys that Mick took a lot of frustration out on, but Mick and Jono had one of the best relationships that I've seen from a coach and a player as well. So, but he'd give everything for you. Obviously, he got everything out of his football ability, and he's just a great bloke that you want in your corner. You know what I mean? Like, he was a great footballer. He had to work very hard to be that. But obviously someone that wouldn't let you down on the field. He'd end up crawling off the field if he needed to give everything to make his teammates better and help support you win a game of football. So just someone that, everyone can only, a true mate, a true brother. So I'm very fortunate to know him and very fortunate to still have that mateship with him.
Yeah, nice.
All right. Staying in the early days, things moved really quickly. Like 99, the Pies won, in inverted commas, the wooden spoon under Tony Shaw's last year. Mick Malthouse takes over. You turn up about that time. Within couple of quick years, you're in back-to-back grand finals against one of the greatest sides ever. That was, we won't go into how they were assembled with the $800,000 extra a year with the salary cap, so we won't talk about that. But what was it like coming up against the greatest side, nearly the greatest side ever, in two grand finals, likes of Voss and Black and Brown, and all the names, we all know the names. What was that like? He was still a very young guy.
Yeah, look, personally, it was I think it's just caught up in the moment, in awe of playing AFL football finals, being in a grand final at a very young age. Probably didn't capture the moment like I would have liked to. As personally, I think as a club, Mick got started pretty quick on assembling a team that he wanted. It wasn't a team full of superstars. It was a team full of hardworking, in and under kind of players that didn't shy away from the moment. And like I said, there was a lot of players that got traded for, and it was sort of a bit like a patch-up team. We didn't play that way under Mick. I think Mick got the best out of a lot of players.
Sorry to interrupt. Mick calls it his favourite team ever. Of all the teams he's coached, Bulldogs, West Coast, all the Collingwood sides, he says 2002 is his favourite.
Yeah, look, I think that just comes back to, the guys that he had weren't absolute superstar players. Like, we did have some players in our team that, equaled and rivaled some of the great players ever to play the game. But I think for majority of our side then, it was, a lot of hard workers, and you knew what you'd get from them. It was, role players that, was really good at one role and did that really, really well. So and under Mick's coaching and under the way, that Mick went about it, he had a way of getting guys to give everything, like I spoke about just about Jono. Like, there were plenty of guys like Nick Maxwell was, rookie and he ended up being a premiership captain. So these kind of guys that he got along the way. Like, Swanee he didn't look like a footballer at the start, but goes on to win a Brownlow, Copeland trophies, premierships, all this kind of stuff. So Mick had a way of earning the respect of the players and really being there for them as well. And he's another one that backed you and was in your corner, whether you were making mistakes or not. And he had a way of really protecting his boys as well, his players. So those teams really reflected that, I think. And for us to have that success, yes, we made a grand final and we lost it, but, to come up against a side like Brisbane, the Lions back then, it was, a team full of superstars that, very experienced, it was something that you look back now, and just to be fortunate enough to be 2 kicks away in 2002, and I think 2003 was a blowout, but that team was one of the best teams of all time. So we had our chances, and you look back now, and yeah, sort of like you have mixed memories and mixed emotions about it. But for that side that year in 2003 as well, I think we might have overachieved a bit. But in saying that, it really just showed how good Mick was as a coach and the support group that he had around him. So, yeah, fond memories, and look back now, and if we would have pinched one of those premierships, it would have been amazing. But obviously, yeah, it went to a better team that day and that year. So,
yeah. Who did you play on in those 2 grand finals, Leon? Or who played on you? Was it Chrissy Johnson or
Chrissy Johnson? Yeah,
yeah.
Chrissy Johnson was one. Yeah, he was, obviously at his peak, and young kid coming up against someone like that. I know Chrissy personally, so we always have that chat, and it's always just full credit to him, and where he was at his football career, and where I was at mine. But really, really tough to be in those situations, and as a young kid coming in, and the football. The way the football was played back then too, a lot different to now.
Yeah.
But yeah, not making any excuses on why why we didn't win. It was more so that they were a great team, and full credit to them for winning those grand finals.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm going to butt in. Where were you in relation to Rocker's kick for goal? Just
good
curious.
Question. Yes.
The one that was the goal in inverted commas.
Yeah,
did you have a good
every
view?
other Collingwood supporter that it was a goal.
Yeah.
But it's something that's still talked about today, as we've seen right now. But Pebs he's an honest man, and he's always said it was a goal and that kind of stuff. But
you didn't have a good view yourself?
No, I didn't know. No, I did not.
Oh,
no,
right.
No.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I was thinking. Sorry, Dominic.
I would have given a goal whether it was a point or not anyway. So.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So speaking of Brisbane, so we do a segment on the Into the Woods podcast. It's called Blast from the Past. Yep. And last year we took a look at a game from 2006. It was against the Lions. It was Scott Pendlebury's debut. Bucks kicked 6. But what I noticed when I was pulling that game apart for our segment was you were off to a flyer that night. I'm not sure if you remember it, but I think it was the first quarter especially, you were dominating. And you were playing on Acker. It seemed like that was when maybe Acker and maybe Lee Matthews had a bit of their falling out, and that he sent him to the back line. He put him on you, and he didn't look happy. Do you have any memories of that night?
Yeah, I do. I was thinking, first thing I thought was, what are you doing down here? Like, you're not a backman. So obviously knew there was something in the water then within their club. But look, it was a good start to my game and stuff like that from what I do remember of it. Kicked a couple and stuff like that. So, but I just remember, Bucks kicking 6, and any time a midfielder can do that, and someone like Bucks, it's amazing. So, it got off to a good start, and playing on Acker down when he was playing in the back line was something that I just didn't realise at the time, and it was a bit unbelievable. So.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Bucks and Pendles, they I guess were the stories of the night. Looking back then, who were who was the best player you ever played with? So you speak of Bucks and Pendles and the likes. Was it one of those guys, or was it maybe someone that we don't talk about very often? Your Jimmy Clements of the world and Anthony Rocker, like.
Yeah, look, I think there's so many of them. Obviously, Buck stands out with the way he went about it, and back then when there was heavy taggers and stuff like that, just to see him have the work rate that he did and his preparation firsthand, and know what he went through before a game and during the week to get that output that he puts out every week in and week out on the field. He's definitely one that stood out. I think Pendles is someone that there's no secret to why he's won nearly every award there is to win. I think he's won everything bar a Brownlow, which he's the votes he's got every year, and very consistent in that. From day one when he first came in, he was a professional, and he's looked upon as a young kid that came in and was first one in the gym, last one out, this kind of stuff, perfectionist, done every little detail. So fast forward to now when he's still playing, and you can absolutely understand if you're on his team or you have that personal experience with him, to why he's still doing what he's doing. He's dominated throughout his 40-year career or whatever it is. I think it's 19. I think 40 because it sounds better. But look, his longevity is unmatched, and it's something that his quality and output that he puts in. I think one for mine is Paul mercurial. Not the most talented footballer. Wasn't the most fittest. But to see him transform from, someone that, like I said, wasn't the most talented and wasn't the most fittest, to then just be a, absolute beast in the gym, and he worked on his fitness, and that, turned him into being a Copeland Trophy winner. I think multiple Copeland Trophies, and his input to the club, not only on field but off field, is something that I take into account as well. He's a board member. He's still heavily involved at the club, and I see him regularly as well. So once again, he's someone that I always stayed close with, and someone who's always reached out whenever, and it's always good to see him. So Liquor would be one of them. I think, I think that probably sums up, some of the greatest players. You got Alan Didak, you got Jono, these guys that you can Swanee, Dale Thomas, Swanee. You can go through them. You know what I mean? Like it's just really, really amazing to be able to have played with these kind of guys. And then, just the output they had, and you can see firsthand when I train with them every day, how hard they work to make sure that they were consistent and had great input day in, day out when we played.
Yeah. Can I briefly ask you, I touched on Ben Johnson before. I wouldn't mind maybe asking a question about another player that we don't really hear anything about anymore, and that is James Clement. Like we love Clement. Like we think he's one of the all-time great defenders. What made him so great? And was he rated internally the way that we rate him? Because he was just outstanding. He could play tall, small. He had a good record on Jimmy Hurd, didn't he?
Yep.
So
look, I think Jimmy was, he was very sought after from Mick. I think, being at Fremantle and Mick understood, and hence why he, went and got traded for him and made sure he came to Collingwood. I think he was one that just, he was just a great one-on-one player. Like he went about it, and he was a professional, and he prepared. His preparation was second to none, and he understood what he needed to do and how he could help the team. And he was just someone that, you sort of you see them how they prepare and what they go through. I think Jimmy was one that just prepared himself the right way and was an absolute professional to get the most out of his ability as well. I think you talk about his matchups with James Hurd, and I don't think I don't remember him getting beaten on the day very often at all. And he played tall, he played small, had a booming kick.
Yes,
he'd kick out a full back, and he'd if he got the quick kick in play on, he'd hit the wing. And that was a strategy that we used. That you could lead at the back of the huddle because he had such a booming kick. But he was very, very rated in our team. He was one of Mick's favourites and one of the first picked every week because we knew what he meant to our side. You could count on him to win his one-on-one and beat whoever he was on. And back in that day, there weren't, there were some decent forwards rolling around and some superstar forwards that played. And for Mick to be able to pick him in his back line and say, look, you're playing on him this week, and that's all he'd say. You didn't have to say, do this, do that, because you knew, that he'd take care of what he needed to do, and you wouldn't have to worry about it again. I think that was something that Mick had in his teams where, the back line, he'd just, say, yep, this is the back six this week. Go and do what you do, get your matchups right, and go to work. You know what I mean? So Jimmy was one of those, and I think our back lines that we had throughout my years reflected that as well. You know what I mean? It wasn't you play on him, you do this, you do that. It was there's the back six, sort out your matchups, do what you do, get it sorted. So
it's interesting. Now, you were an All-Australian forward and a star All-Australian backman towards the end of your career. I always thought you'd make the transition into the midfield and spend more time there than you did. Did you harbour a wish to play more midfield time?
I wasn't keen on doing off-season work. So every time we came back from pre-season,
that explains it.
My running times and that weren't the best, and I wasn't the hardest worker going around. So for mine, it was, there's probably one of the regrets I have from my, AFL career was I wasn't quite professional enough. I didn't quite work as hard as I should have as someone that had the potential probably to play midfield and consistently play midfield. I think I pinched hit in there a lot. I think when I was up and about and I was enjoying my footy the most, that's when I was at my fittest. Obviously, with the work rate stuff and being a professional athlete and at the high level, it's probably one of my biggest regrets is not being professional enough and not having the work rate of an AFL footballer to get the most out of my ability. Hence, it's understandable to me, and I sleep well at night understanding that like I got out of my football career probably overachieved in what I was able to achieve from my work rate and what I wanted to put in. So yeah, in saying that, probably had the potential to play midfield and consistently play midfield, but probably didn't have the work rate to match your Swannies and your Luke Balls and your Pendleburys and your side bottoms and your Buckleys, your Lucurias, all these guys that were elite athletes and got the most out of their fitness and worked really hard to own that spot. So for me to go in there and take over one of those guys' spots and consistently play in there would probably wouldn't do justice to the team that we had. So it was something that I'd done in my younger days, was play midfield and roll around, but that's junior footy and you can get away with that stuff there. When you're coming up against athletes that are at their maximum and at their peak fitness wise, it's probably something that I couldn't match it with those guys from opposition teams and that. So hence why I was a forward line player with impact here and there, and really hit and miss with my form and my games. And early on, I was in and out of the team. Played a couple of games in my first year, then got dropped to the twos. Come back in, played a couple of games, got dropped to the twos. So that kind of stuff. So then consistency, for mine, I understand why that was there. But then obviously, the want to play in the midfield. And there were some years where I played quite a few games in there, and but it wasn't a full game in the midfield like we had our great midfielders do. So yeah,
nice. Well, what you were good at was kicking goals, and you kicked some amazing goals in your time. I think you only won goal of the year once, 2008, the goal against Freo over in WA.
Yep.
I heard somewhere, it might have been Mason Cox's podcast, I could be wrong. Did you describe it as not even being in your top 10 goals? And if that's true, what is your best goal, in your opinion?
Look, it was something that, it probably stock standard goal from a 45-degree angle on a drop punt. I think the lead up to it was what stood out.
Yeah.
I think the effort after effort and then the tackle and then that kind of stuff. But as far as the best goal and one of the goals that's up there. Any goal that I kicked that back home in WA is a favourite of mine. I could point up to the crowd where all my family was sitting and really celebrate it and share it with those guys. So any goal I kicked at home was a favourite one. There is one that stands out for me. It was against Essendon and just running out to the left pocket and kicking a right foot check side. So that's one that stands out. But as far as, very lucky to kick that, that goal against Freo in Perth and get goal of the year for it. You don't go out to do that and kick miraculous goals and stuff like that. It's just something that I've practiced since a very young age, and something that very fortunate and lucky enough that in a game at the G in front of so many people, because you've practiced it so many times, it just comes off naturally. So, all the work, it's not a fluke. I tell a lot of people, it's never a fluke. It's something that you practice all the time. You know what I mean? So when it comes off like that, it's just, it's something that you've practiced a lot and it pays off when you're on the G in front of so many people.
So that goal against Essendon, I know which one you're talking about because I've been watching a few of your highlights in the last couple of days. Stephen Quartermain called it. It was a great goal, great call. Were you ripped off that year? Should have that been your goal of the year? Should you be a two-time winner? Do you remember who won it?
Oh, no, I don't remember who won it. But you win them, you don't win them, that kind of stuff. It's something that, you can always. I know Eddie Betts is stiff because he could have won it 15 times. So
these
I
think Peter Dacos only won it once.
It's different to I suppose all the guys like I know get along with Ed and talk to a lot of guys, and that Daniel Motlop's one that always kicked amazing goals. So the guys are out there, and that is something that we sort of value, and it's a little bit of a competition between us. We know each other and that kind of stuff. They'll ring you and say, "Oh, I was pretty good," and whatnot, and this and that. So Bobby Hill kicked one from the pocket one night, and I wasn't even watching the game, but he's a nephew of mine, and he kicked a goal from the pocket similar to one of mine, and straight away I had a message from Ed saying, "Oh, did you see the goal Bobby kicked? It looked like yours," and this and that. So you've always got that competitive edge there where people are going to compare this and that. But for mine, very fortunate I won it on in Perth. But the other ones that I kicked, just happy the crowd enjoy it, and I can look back now and show my family and my kids and stuff like that, and they can have a look at it. and yeah, really be happy with it.
Speaking of Bobby Hill, did you play any part in getting him over to the Pies? And how excited are you to see him play for a great club now and win that norm a couple of years ago?
Yeah, look, Bobby's a nephew of mine. He grew up in Northam, very close family with his family and that. And, I did give his mum a call and had a chat to her about, and, we sort of had a few conversations about the club and where it was at, and the fact that the club were interested in trying to get him and that. The club done a great job in getting him across and stuff like that. So as far as I just done, I just had a few conversations with his mum and had a conversation with him, but I don't think that really, sealed the deal or not. It was just bringing a family member and having a chat about the club, and I'm very passionate, very biased about the club as well. So maybe it did in a way, but I can't take credit on getting Bobby to Collingwood. That's for sure. The recruiters and they obviously done their job and done it well. Yeah. I think the list we've got now is a reflection of that as well. So very happy that that he's at the club and he's happy, and hopefully he stays there very, very long time.
Yeah, his potential just seems to be enormous. I'm just wondering how far do you reckon he could go? Is he the type of guy who you think could make it into spend more time in the midfield? He's very valuable off forward, of course.
A possible wing, maybe.
A possible winger. Is somebody who breaks the lines more. So by using his pace further up the ground. Is that how you see him and his potential?
Yeah, look, I think his potential is uncapped, and I think, to watch him grow up and watch him play as a junior, and he was doing the stuff he does now back then. You know what I mean? He stood out, left and right foot, very quick, could bounce either hand, could, very, very much so further developed than, kids his age back then. So to see him, obviously get drafted for one, and then to work on his craft and go through the challenges he did with his cancer battle and that kind of stuff, to come out of that and come back to where he is now. Once again, very biased because he's my family, but to see him go through that and then achieve what he's been able to achieve in a very short time, and still a lot of career left in him. Like I said, his ability and, his potential is uncapped. He can get out of his career what he wants to get out of his career, and I think that's on him. I'd love to see him up in the midfield. I think he's value wherever he is. But I think his decision making, his creative play, his initiative and what he does on a football level, he definitely makes the whole team better. That's very rare in players that you find can do what he can do.
He's kicking inside forward 50, and the few occasions I've seen it, but really good.
Yeah, no, his ball use is second to none. Like, he's a really good ball user, left and right foot. He's confident in that. He's put the work in to do that, to get that. One that was very, very headstrong on playing AFL football. So I was very pleased to see him get drafted, and even better when he came to my team, the Pies, Mighty Pies.
All right, so I'm fascinated in your last two seasons, especially. So I wouldn't mind maybe digging a little bit further into that.
Yep.
So 2010 will obviously go down as one of the greatest ever seasons as a Collingwood supporter and anyone that's involved at the club. But for you, it was a bit of a up and down year.
Yep.
You missed the prelim due to injury, regained your spot for the grand final, kicked a really crucial goal in that last, but was then obviously dropped the following week. I think Mick Moldhouse describes it as his biggest coaching regret to this day. How was that period? Like, first of all, the drawn game, the aftermath of it, but then the disappointment of missing out and watching all your best mates go on to win the flag. If you can just sort of take us behind closed doors around that time.
Yeah, look, I think, the lead up to the grand final, and, I was fortunate to get back into the team after missing, the lead up and that. I think for mine it was, after the draw, most of the team didn't understand what was going on, whether it was going to be extra time, come back next week or whatever. I think for mine it was, really confusing time straight after the game. But then once we understood and that they sort of let us know, it was, come on back next week to get the training. And, then I think we had a recovery session and then left. I think we had a Tuesday off. But, half expected the call from Mick, didn't play, nowhere near what I wanted to do, and sort of underperformed and understood that. that one goal wasn't going to justify, anything really. It was a crucial goal.
That was a big goal.
Without that, we lose and that. But
exactly. Well, that
so
put
you
us,
could say that about every other score in the game as well, from the first
Yeah.
quarter to the last. All this kind of stuff. So, but for mine, I sort of half expected that call from Mick, and when he did call, it wasn't. It wasn't an argument. It wasn't a back and forth. It wasn't that. It was just, I understood, and Mick, Mick backed me my whole career. Mick, just sort of looked after me when, a lot of media, a lot of people in the media, and a lot of people had opinions of me, and that kind of stuff. Mick backed me in, so I never really questioned his judgment, and sort of put the team first all the time. It was, disappointing not to play in the draw, in the repeat and win with the boys. But I think for mine, it was, it was something that I got over pretty quick for the sake of the team. Just, thank Mick for his phone call, and I knew it was a tough phone call for him to make. But you put the team first, and, just assured Mick that I'd be at training, I'd be in good spirits, and, getting to train, and the next day after that phone call to say I wasn't playing, to be close with all the guys, and to be really close with them, and great teammates with them. They were looking at my reaction and sort of seeing how I was going to take it. I didn't want to take nothing away from the team, and them winning, and making sure that, one less thing to worry about is me being shitty and worrying about myself. So got to train and upbeat, got around the boys, and probably was one of the happiest on the track. Just, forced that out of myself to make sure the team knew not to worry about, me not playing and that, and they could move on with getting the job done and winning. So, in hindsight, it was, I'd love to have been part of that team, to play so many years there, but then to miss out on the replay and win so easily. I think, and then on the flip side of that, you got Tyson Goldsack, who came in for me, and he's a premiership player and great bloke, and, he's apologised plenty of times over it, but, it's football, you know what I mean? Like, it's something that you get over pretty quick, and, the disappointment of not performing that first week, cost me, a place in the replay and a premiership at the end of it. So I got over it pretty quickly, understood why and all that. So to get the team up and going and really support them in winning that game was a main concern of mine after I got that phone call from Mick.
Yeah, a bit of a side note. So you currently work at the club.
Yep.
In 2023, did you maybe get around someone like a Johnny Noble that might have been experiencing a similar thing to what you did in 2010, and Tay Adams and guys like that?
Yeah, I did. I had a conversation with a couple of them, and it was really just about my experiences of missing out, and then coming back the next year and really being a driving force to make sure the guys didn't get complacent, and let them know that, it's something that we need to win another one. There's guys that missed out, and, the guys that won it, they needed to put in and come back with that same energy to make sure that we were there again, and gave us every opportunity. The next year, worked my ass off to be that driving force, and to be really, at the guys to say, I didn't win last year. I want to win one, So to really be selfish in that fact, to say, you need to be better, you need to do this, need to be more boisterous and take more of a leadership role, was something that, really. And Chris Tarrant came back. He was down back. He'd missed out.
Yeah.
These guys that were, these guys are at the club now that didn't play in that, in the replay and had a premiership. We really pushed the team to go again and be just as good. Unfortunately, came up against a great side once again in Geelong. And,
we always come up against the great sides, don't we?
Oh, definitely.
Going right back to the Carlton days of the late 70s, early 80s. They were one of the best sides ever. We met them. We came up against Brisbane. We come up against. We never come up against, just okay sides when it comes to grand final.
Never a grand final for us.
They're all some of the.
If you want to be the best, you got to beat the best.
Exactly.
So, it's people want to see that. We want to test ourselves against the best, and that's all you want to do. You know what I mean? You want to play the best and see where where you're at, and wouldn't have it any other way. So it just so happens that we had Geelong, we had them in that game, and they were a great side to come back and get over us in the end. Just shows how great their football club was and how good their players were. So.
So you spoke a little bit about the following year. So 2011, how you came back and you're really motivated to get better and try and win that flag. So you had that big positional move to the halfback flank. How did that come about? Like, and because you're amazing, obviously all Australian. So yeah, was that Mick coming to you kind of early in the preseason, or what was the story around that?
Yeah, there was a bit of a lead up to it. I think the first session back, we split up and the forwards went one way, the backs went the other. And, like the 10 years before that, I went to drift off with the forwards and go down and kick some goals and take it easy. And Mick sort of just shouted out my name and said, go down, go that way, go with the back line. And I thought he was taking a piss. I thought he was joking. And I went to walk with the forwards again. He called me back and we had a bit of to and fro. And when I finally realised he was serious and that, it was going to, I was going to go down and do training and do a bit of a pre-season with the back line. I was a bit shocked, but then Scotty Waters was the backline coach that year. And, Nick Maxwell was really, really good. Heater, the guys down there, Benny Reid, Brownie, H, like these guys were really, really good in supporting me and giving me the advice and support that I needed to play my best footy. And all it was just win your one-on-ones, beat the player. That's all we need from you. We don't need you to be kicking goals out your ass. We don't need you to be getting heaps of the ball. We don't need you to do, all this fancy and fly stuff. We just need you to beat your man one-on-one. And I thought, you know what, it's something that I really enjoy is playing one-on-one footy and beating someone, in that way and playing my footy like that. But the relieving thing for me was I didn't have someone hanging off me all game. It was someone, all of a sudden, I didn't have someone chasing me around. I had to chase someone else. So, 10 years of having someone follow you around and chase you and nudge you and be on you all the time to then be the guy that's got to stand near someone and beat them. It was a change-up that I needed. It was a challenge that I needed, and Mick sort of seen that. It's something that, Mick was always ahead of the curve. He's seen the potential of someone like myself going to a half-back and being a really offensive player and using the ball and using my skills the way I did. And to be able to get All-Australian that year was a great reward for hard work. It was one of the, hardest working years that I had. But it was one of the most fun as well. There was a rule that you couldn't come off the field unless you was told to by the backline coach, which I got, ripped the shit out of me a few times early on because I just was buggered and I'd come off and no, you got to stay out there and that's one of our rules and this stuff. And you go from playing forward where you can come off whenever you want really because you had enough rotations for forward line players to obviously not having too many rotations down back. So to get that into my game and to be consistently out there and be, one of the fittest I've been, at the top level at the Pies. Obviously got the rewards in the end with, having a really consistent year and playing on some really, really good players as well. It was one of my most enjoyable years playing down back. And it's just unfortunate we didn't get the flag in the end. But looking back on that year, it was one of my most enjoyable.
Was it your best year in your opinion, performance-wise?
Yeah, I think it was. I think it was just, to put the effort in that I did and get the rewards out of it, it was really pleasing. I think, I had a lot of fun playing down back and created a real mateship with H, and the other guys down there. It was just a brotherhood within itself and one that, I look back now very fondly of.
So, as you just said, your best year, we agreed it's your best year. It was also your last year. So you shocked the AFL world by retiring. Can you give us a little bit of an insight as to I guess why?
Why? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was a battle to come back after 2010. We had an overseas camp and I wasn't too keen on going. I was enjoying my time back home and I knew my sort of was coming to the back end of my career and really doubted whether I wanted to play football anymore. For 2010 was a real struggle for me to even, for 2010, after 2010, it was a really, really big struggle for me to even want to do a pre-season and come back to the club. And obviously I was contracted too and that didn't really matter too much. I didn't, I was looking to retire and then to have a few conversations with Mick and Jeff Walsh at the time. And, those guys, talked about just getting back to enjoying football. And then I think from off the back of those conversations, I think Mick knew I needed a challenge and hence why he put me down back. But, then you get to the end of 2011 where, a really enjoyable year and a successful year for myself, the club as well. Felt I had great input in the club having that success that year and falling just short. But on the back end of that year, it was, contract stuff and salary cap stuff and all this kind of stuff. For me personally, it didn't quite align with what I was looking for, what I wanted to do. I felt I needed, to be rewarded really on having a great year. And that wasn't contractually, didn't really want to set the world on fire with what I wanted. It was just couldn't quite come to terms with the club at the time, off the back of wanting to retire the year before and then staying a year and then sorting that out. That was one side of it, the contract stuff, where it didn't quite align there, what the club wanted and what I wanted. So there was that part of it. There was also the part of home where I'd been away for so long and, I was half gone already. So, the cultural pull and the pull from my family and my father and all the stuff that I'd missed out on over the years, that my two brothers were able to do and the cultural aspect of it. That was weighing on me heavily as well. In the end, I made the right decision. I think, for me in my journey and my life, I think, after 2011 to make that decision to retire from AFL football and go home, I was really able to connect back to country and back to my culture and my family and really start my journey as a cultural, as a First Nations Ballalong Whadjuk man to really get a lot more knowledge on my culture and from my father and I wouldn't change that for anything. So, I sit here comfortably, with having retired after that year, and it's something that I felt pretty comfortable when I made that decision. I had no regrets about it, nothing like that. I do miss playing now that I'm involved with the club and go watch them and, sort of sit back now and miss those days of playing and playing on the G and just that enjoyment of football. I still do play. I do a bit of coaching as well. So there's that side of it for me that I still get that enjoyment. It's just not having 80,000 mad Collingwood supporters shouting out your name. So it's a little bit different, but, I still enjoy the game. I still love playing. So, that decision to retire then, I know it shocked a lot of people, but for me and my family and that, it was something that was coming and something that I knew I had to sit well with. And, it was a decision that took me a bit to make, but one that I don't regret at all.
Right. I've pushed this question further up the list. You mentioned family, because I reckon a lot of Collingwood fans are keen to hear the answer to this one. Your son, handy footballer, is that something he wants to pursue? Is he keen to pursue a career? And can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I've got an 18-year-old son, Levi. He's not into footy at all. So he's not. It's not something that he that he worries about too much. I've got a stepson, Nathan. He's a gun footballer. He's on his way and he's played state 12s and schoolboys and that. So he's on his way. Hopefully, he'll have all the supports to do whatever he wants in life. If he chooses football, then that's great. I've got a 4-year-old. He's turning 5 on the 9th, which is, not far away. So he turns 5 and he's right into it. He comes to football training with me.
Here we go. Long time to wait.
So there's a couple in the works, but, if they decide to play, it's great. I'll always support them in whatever they want to do. I've got a couple of daughters as well and a granddaughter. So, love all my family, my kids, and as anyone will, you support them in whatever they want to do. But selfishly, a little bit of sneaky, hope one of them goes to the Pies and represents continues the legacy. So fingers crossed.
But before the next sensible question, I'm going to ask you this one too. I heard a story going back years ago. The week leading up to the 2002 grand final, did you head up to BT's farm for a bit of hunting with a group of players?
Yeah, look, BT tells that story very, very well.
Was there an incident?
There was.
Do you want to tell the story?
That story's actually grown quite a few legs over the years from BT. But yeah, look, we went out shooting and something that I missed out on a lot. And BT, a great mate of mine and a great family friend. He's very, he's a great mate to my father and looks after Dad whenever Dad's in town or he goes to Perth and that. Stayed in contact over the years, which is amazing. But BT was one early on that, understood, that I missed home and a lot of my cultural stuff. And he obviously owned a farm out at Romsey. And, for myself, it was, he invited me out and allowed me to go out, and get some kangaroo meat and stuff like that, which, I grew up, that's a cultural thing of mine and was able to go out on his farm and do a bit of that stuff, which I was very fortunate that he allowed me to do that. That was another reason I felt a bit more comfortable in Melbourne and that. So he's always been one that has really supported me, stayed close and gave me advice over my career, and I'm very, very happy that I can call BT a mate and someone that has really helped me out over the years. So, but that in the lead up we went out and we probably shouldn't have went out. It was raining for a couple of days, and as you probably know, it's very hilly out there. Yeah. So it was on the back of the ute, couple of us on the back. Dad and BT was in the cabin, and we came over this hill, and because it had been raining for a couple of days, the ute actually slid down the hill, and I think it was Rupert. He bailed, he jumped off, and hurt his hamstring in the process. So he had to try and keep that quiet, and we couldn't quite go back to the club and say, look, we were out shooting, and we jumped off the ute and all this kind of stuff. But it's something that we kept quiet for a lot of years, but after we'd been retired a long time, we was able to share that story and have a bit of a laugh about it. So BT mentioned it on Triple M and over his, media outlets and all that stuff. It's a great story that he tells. So it's a good laugh to share it.
Exactly. Your role at the club now.
Yep.
You want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I'm the cultural development manager. I think for mine, it was a process to get back to the club.
Yep.
A lot of experiences and stuff that, to start, to arrive at the club in 99, end of 99, and at a time where, racism in sport and the Collingwood Football Club and the reputation of the club and the racism involved with the club. I think it was, everyone sort of knew, the history of the club and the reputation of it with racism. So it was very tough to go to that club and get drafted to them. I know, once my name got called out and word got around to within my, First Nations community back home that I'd been drafted to them, the questions started coming straight away to say, are you really going to go to that club? That's a racist club, this, that, and all the other, things that come from me getting drafted to Collingwood. To go there and experience a lot of instances where, it's just people aren't educated, people sort of assume you could say this, say that, or be this way or be that way when it's really offensive. That education throughout my career has always been there. It was a very difficult juggling act between being a cultural First Nations man and being an AFL footballer at the Collingwood Football Club. To juggle that early on was very, very difficult. I reckon I retired plenty of times, and Mum and Dad made the decision that we were heading home a lot of the time as well, because of these instances and these experiences. But, the love of football and the dream of mine to play at the top level was something that, kept me at the club. Homesickness, all this kind of stuff played a part as well. But, my dream to play AFL football wasn't going to be taken away because of some tough situations I found myself in and it wasn't at my fault. It wasn't, because of me. It was, because of other people's experiences and education, lack thereof. So for mine to play there that many years and educate people along the way, it was very challenging and very tough, took a toll on me. But, to play there 11 years and feel that when I arrived, in 99 and then left after 2011 season, I confidently can feel that, I've made the place a better place and educated a lot of people on First Nations issues and the true history of this country and this kind of stuff where a lot of times it was, nearly every time it was lack of education. People thought, it was okay to use this term. It was okay to say that or do this or do that, but having that conversation with them and really explaining why it's offensive and why, you can't say this and this is the meaning behind it. This is what it means. Do you actually understand what First Nations people have been through, since colonisation and settlement? I was always met with them understanding and being really remorseful and being very sorry. And these are guys that I spend every day with, you know what I mean? So to educate them and for them to understand how it affected me and what it meant to my people, it always was met with remorsefulness and an apology. And I actually became closer with these guys because of that experience. Then to fast forward to actually having conversations with the club. And, I did go home after I retired, but it was something that I always wanted to do was go back to the club in a working capacity. And and further educate and further use the club as a vehicle to educate so many more people and, advance my First Nations community and my First Nations people, advance them like, generations before me. So the work I do there now is to ensure that, cultural protocols and education is at the forefront of any discussion I have with, our supporters, our members, our work staff, our team, our coaches, our players, AFLW, AFL, VFL, like all these guys that make up the Collingwood Football Club. It's my job and my role that I take a lot of pride in to obviously educate, answer any questions they have, but then ensure that the Collingwood Football Club is a place that that anyone can come to and excel and be happy and be themselves. Like I said before, it's very hard for me to go to the Collingwood Football Club and be an AFL player, but then pick and choose when I could celebrate my culture, fit into the mould of an AFL player, hide my culture, hide who I was as a First Nations man because it didn't fit the mould of an AFL player back then. It didn't fit the environment then. But then to educate slowly along the way is something that I continue to do today. And I do first and foremost believe that we have to pay respect to the traditional owners of this land, which is our First Nations community, and mob of it. But then to fully understand and explain that this country is made up of such a multicultural community and people from all over the world call this place home, so to celebrate and encourage people to be themselves, to come together as far as, different backgrounds, different cultures, and all make up the Collingwood Football Club. We can all come together. We can all come together and share our cultures and share our personalities and our histories to make up a beautiful place, which is the Collingwood Football Club at the moment. Not saying we've got it all sorted. There's a lot of work still to do, not just at the club, but in community and in society. But I think, for myself, using the Collingwood Football Club to influence and have that conversation, and through social media, through, our media outlets, through our players, through our staff, through everyone that's involved with the Collingwood Football Club, we can, obviously have those conversations and be better educated for it. And then we can move forward together and obviously understand and respect our history. You can't let that go or just walk past that. I think our history needs to be told and be educated upon for everyone, but then to move forward together and be better for it is part of the work I do. I take pride in it. It's something I've done my whole life, whether I'm at the Collingwood Football Club or not. It's something I do. It's a lifestyle for me. It's not a job. So making sure that, I stay consistent with that. And the club's been great. Jeff Brown's been amazing at, being supportive while he was in president. Barry, he's come on now and he's the president now, and he's one that's been on the board. I've got along really well with him. But the support and guidance from, the board of the Collingwood Football Club since I've returned to work has been unwavering, and their support, it means everything to me. To be able our Barrowan program and NGA area region is Tennant Creek, the Barkly region. So to have a camp up there recently and, have the likes of Darcy Moore come up, Craig McRae, Jody Sizer, Barry Carp, like these guys, execs and board members come up to this camp and really, involve themselves in culture up there and really find out what, culture is about in that area, was amazing. So the club's been great. The support I get to do my role has been unwavering. So that's really pleasing. But like I said, something that I take a lot of pride in and I'll continue to do. And hopefully I can work in this role for a long time and influence a lot of people and just keep educating people along the way.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Leon. You should be really proud in the role that you've played to help turn the club around. That's
Andrew Cracker, is he still in a similar role with you, Dan?
No, he started off. Then he left. So
I hadn't heard his name
for a short term.
But
like everyone's support that comes to the club is something that everyone's got a different story. As much as all of this country think, well, not all, but majority of this country think that we're all just Aboriginal people. You break it down further to that. We've got over 250 different tribal groups across this country. Different languages, different customs, different cultures, that kind of stuff. So when you break it down and you sort of have these conversations about that, you can really see how diverse it is. You can understand how, I'm from Perth, Western Australia. I now live on Gunditjmara country down in Haywood. regional southwest Victoria. They do things totally different to what I do back home. Different diets, different cultures, different dances, different all this kind of stuff. So when you break it down like that and you start having these conversations, it's really diverse and you can understand a lot more why we're doing what we're trying to do.
Well, so just when you think about it geographically,
Yep.
from Perth to down to Haywood, if you're in Europe, there'd be kind of 4 countries in between them. So that's how kind of diverse, gives you an idea of how diverse it is.
Yeah,
Just
definitely. And
geographically,
when you go through a different tribal area or tribal group, you have to get permission to travel through there. It's the same as going to a different country. The same as you got to get a visa, you got to get permission, you got to go through customs, this kind of stuff. In our cultural ways, this was it mightn't have been a big fence and a border, but it would have been a river, a significant area that you couldn't cross over without permission. Because that's someone else's. So when you start breaking it down like that, it's I wouldn't say easy to educate people on it. It takes time and takes understanding, but to be proactive in it, like we are at the Collingwood Football Club, I think that's part of the reason why we're able to influence and have so many more conversations around it and educate so many more people. And you've got to have the right people involved to do that as well. So the staff at the Collingwood Football Club are very supportive, like I said. I love my job. I love being at the club. I love where the club's at the moment. It's taken a lot of work to get there. But the likes of, the board members and the staff and the team and everyone to one of our things at the club is side by side. So we live that every day and a nest for all. This kind of stuff is to make sure everyone's inclusive and included in what we're doing and take ownership in the journey we're on. So no doubt, hence why, last year was very, very, 2 years ago, 2023 was very successful. I feel the club was on a journey together. All had buy-in from the coach to the president right down. So it's no secret to mine why we're very successful and the club's in a position that it is.
Yeah, nice. All right, so just before we end this podcast, we'll have some quick fire questions. So we'll start off with, what is the most intense spray you've ever witnessed?
Oh,
and were you on the end of a few?
And wasn't Mick looked after me. I've got a couple, but it wasn't nowhere near some of the sprays I've seen Benny Johnson get. He was a bit of a whipping boy for Mick. But, Mick, Jono sort of understood that it was, he copped the spray and it was,
Is it because he could take it? Because
you hear
that about coaches.
Yeah,
they focus on one player who could take it.
Yeah, he had that great relationship with Mick where he knew that, Mick would give him a spray and it was, I'd say every time it was Jono's fault, but, he'd say different. But for mine, it was, Mick had that great relationship with him where he knew it was at the team, wasn't just at him. So but for mine, it was, like some of the, Mick was good. He'd be short and sharp with it. And sometimes it would go straight over, some of the guys' heads that it was even at them because he was so quick and so sharp with it. But, Mick was one that, he was good at giving a spray. But then he's obviously good at, coming back the other way and really looking after his boys and his players.
Were you a part of that team? I think it was 2005 Anzac Day where he saddled the players down on the ground. I think it was at halftime or three-quarter time, and he pointed at individual players. And I think Tony Jones, who was a reporter for Channel 9, said that Scotty Burns got a huge spray, but ended up being Shane Woden. Were you a part of that team?
No, I don't remember sitting down. Probably would have missed that. I don't remember it. So, I dare say I was a part of that.
Fair. Well, who was the best sledger you ever came across? It could be a teammate or an opponent or...
Dids comes to mind. Dids, he was good, but Heath Shaw, he was the best. He could talk underwater for one, but some of the stuff he'd come up with. But I think at the start of his career, I think he played VFL and AFL in the same weekend. I think he'd had 80 odd touches for both games and, dominated and probably got best on ground in both games on his debut for Collingwood AFL. So to have that kind of start, I think he knew from then and he was really good, but he could back it up as well. So he was one that talked a lot of trash, but backed it up with his play and the way he went about it. So really beaten and he definitely backed it up.
Absolutely. He's a star. Toughest opponent?
Chrissy Johnson comes to mind. Obviously, like we spoke about before, he was a very seasoned footballer at the time, very experienced and, probably at his peak when I came in. So for him to, just go about his game and play the way he did, and he made it look really, really easy. Made it hard for you to get a kick, but then he'd rack up the possessions and really dominate from half back. So he's one that comes to mind. I think every team had their dominant backline players that played on the small forwards. So but yeah, Chrissy Johnson's definitely at the top of that list.
What about when you were a defender? What forward was the most difficult in that season?
Probably Cyril. Cyril was one. Cyril was one. We sort of went in and it was a rotation thing. One would have a crack at him and someone else would have a crack at him. But he's one that stands out where he could do stuff that you thought you was in the right position, and before you knew it, he was gone, and you didn't know where he went. So and I played forward a lot of years, and and I thought I'd be ready for it, but obviously someone like that, and it's always good. He's very humble, Cyril, and I always got along well with him, and for him to be able to do what he did on a football oval inspired so many people. So yeah, he's definitely one of the toughest.
So looking back, what stands out as your favourite win of your career?
I think anytime we beat Carlton.
Good answer.
Good. Anytime we beat Essendon, that was good.
Even better.
But yeah, look, I think there's too many to sort of talk about. But anytime I went home and played, and we played West Coast or Freo, definitely. But I think the Hawthorn game to get us into the grand final in 2011. Luke Ball kicked that goal from the pocket. Buddy kicked that one on his left front. Just back and forth, and like a heavyweight bout where one cops a punch and then you give one and that kind of stuff. For us to be up at the right time and when the final siren blew, just that stuff. It takes it all. It takes everything out of you. You've got to give every bit of energy you got. But that game definitely stands out as one that we knew what was on the line, and for myself, missing out the year before and then beating them guys to get in the grand final. I remember just running up to Taz, Chris Tarrant, and just saying, "We're in the grand final, like we're back. Let's win one together." And we both played down back that year too. So he was another one, played forward all of his career, and then found himself as a backman. So for me and him to be able to share that as well was amazing.
Sorry, just with that game, I remember, I think Geelong, their prelim was fairly easy on them. Do you reckon that game took a bit out of the Pies?
Yeah, I reckon it did, but you train all year for that. You train like you sort of if we were good enough, we would have won against Geelong. The lead up, people have blowout games, and it's a bit easier for them. Other guys, you sort of feel like we've played a tough game that's prepared us just right for a grand final. You can take it either way, but for mine, it was our preparation was that. Look, you can't predict how you want to, go in, prelim and who you're going to play and whether you want to walk over or not. But sort of held us in good stead. Like I said, we had our chances in the grand final against Geelong, and they were a great side and came back and beat us. So all full credit to them and the great side that they had.
No. All right, last one. I've got one over after this. The final one.
Well, you go.
I'll go. Pies this year. What do you reckon?
That was my question.
That was your question. What do you reckon? Yeah.
I think we've recruited really well. I think we've lost some players to other clubs and that, but the guys we've got in, are particular. And it gives me memories of Mick in that 2002 team where we traded for players and it made us better. And it's something that I think after last year and missing out on finals altogether, I think the guys are really, really hungry, and there's a driving force there now, and a bit of a want to get back to where the club feels and the team feels they belong. So hopefully we stay injury free, touch wood, and hopefully we can have a consistent year where everyone's on the park and they can work on what they need to work on. But quietly confident that we'll first of all make finals. And then hopefully we're in a good position to get a double chance and then go from there. And I think they've showed that they can play finals and they know what to do in crunch games or late in the game when it's close. So I think if we make finals first and foremost, gives us every chance and to win another flag, which I'm hoping that we do.
How is Nick's foot? Do you know what's going on there?
No, I don't. Unfortunately, I try and steer clear of the football department, and I do catch up with the guys and that when I'm in at work, but. The work I do over on my side, which is the cultural stuff, and that is for mine personally, way more important than the football side. So I hope it's okay. I'm sure he's going to do everything. He's a complete professional. So I'm sure he's going to do everything to get it right, and hopefully come round one, he's ready to go, and he's a vital part to our team, and like they all are. But I don't reckon they'll rush him back and risk anything.
Yeah.
I think he'll be, if he's right to go round one, which I'm sure he will be, and then we'll go from there, and hopefully he just has a consistent year and brings the Brownlow back for us.
All right, Leon, that was awesome. Thank you so much for your time, mate. We really appreciate it. That's it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and give us a 5-star rating on Spotify and Apple. If you want to follow our socials, you can find us on X at Into the Woods Pod and on Instagram at Into the Woods Pod 10. Thanks for listening. We look forward to doing it again soon. See ya.